So I teach these classes, and I wanted to set up, I was going to talk to her about it, but I've had, this year my mother died, and I was sick, and just been behind on everything, but that's okay.
Are you teaching this summer?
Yes, I had a class this morning, but I had it here at my house because it was 4 students. When it gets to 5 or more, I'll book St. Mark's.
Oh, I see. So you don't do it independently, but it's a class.
Yeah, it is independent. It's my own classes that I set up. And,
Right.
And I also go to students' homes and teach classes too. Call those house call art
I
classes.
might ask you questions about that later.
Okay.
I'm interested. Well, is it recording?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Yuko and I, maybe you should describe them.
Hi, I'm Yuko. I'm originally from Japan. I just came to Milwaukee last year to study architecture in the UWM. I'm doing my PhD now.
Ooh.
That's pretty much
What city are you from?
I'm from the very small rural town in Japan, so you probably don't know.
Which island?
In the main island.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in the middle of the main island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I moved to Tokyo to attend a college, and then after finishing my bachelor's degree, I went to London to do my master's, and then went back to Tokyo, worked as an architect for 2 years, and then left my job, and I'm doing my PhD here.
Well, we're lucky to have you. We had exchange students from Japan staying with us
Oh, really?
2 years in a row. Yeah. My son went to Kagoshima for 6 weeks in a program, and then they contacted us about having a student come here, and he was from Osaka. And then the family who Nick, our son, stayed with in Kagoshima, they wanted their son and daughter to come, and so we said, don't pay for the program, we'll figure it out, just have them come, we'll figure it out. But then they got into trouble in terms of a visa, and we had to call the U.S. senator from our district. And they made sure he got his visa. It was interesting. Interesting use of government. So, yeah, so we had, and actually, Jo was here. It's R-Y-O. I hope I'm saying it right, Jo. Anyway, he stayed here, but Nick was already in college. And his sister Akane stayed at a neighbor's house. So.
Are you from Milwaukee, by the way?
Racine, Wisconsin.
Racine. It's just
South
of Milwaukee and north of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And on the lake.
Yeah.
You just drive south,
Yeah.
and you'll get there.
I see.
Although Racine juts out onto what is this? It's just a peninsula. No, just the land juts out into the water, and so Racine's further east actually than here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, to kind of give you a sense of this documentary we're interested in creating, so we're part of a summer program and PhD program called Building Landscapes and Culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the Architecture and Urban Design PhD program. And Yuko's been here for
A year.
a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I went to college over by Philadelphia, from North Dakota, Fargo. And so
Mm-hmm.
both of us don't know Milwaukee as well as you might have
Mm-hmm.
church residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this, we kind of see ourselves as facilitators. So I'm interested in photography. She's interested in architecture and design. And we ultimately want to be essentially facilitators to create, to kind of process this, the neighborhood consciousness or conscious memories
Mm-hmm.
of this neighborhood.
Okay.
And so,
I'm going to turn off my phone. Actually, remember I should do this. Okay, so you want memories and recollections.
right.
Okay.
Your connections to the space, how you identify with the space, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Right. So we want to begin by first actually we want to make sure that this is illegal.
Oh, I have to sign something?
Yeah,
Fine.
yeah.
Where do I sign?
Yeah,
So these are just
2
releases.
forms. The first one saying like we're using your like voice and photographs.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're gonna write
Okay.
our names, and can you just write the date?
That'd
The
be it.
next page. We need a printed names.
And then signature?
Fun shoes.
Oh, I actually bought them right here on Downer Avenue.
No way.
Majoli?
Yes, yeah, Majoli footgear. Right, I saw them in the window and I went, oh my
They're fun.
gosh.
Yeah, I love that store. I've never like shopped in the store, but I've been like always interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one that we went
I
in?
don't usually
yeah,
shop.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, okay.
We went in.
I don't usually shop there either, but I couldn't resist these. It's not that I don't like them. It's just that it's really, the clothes are more for younger people, and not that I wouldn't wear some of it sometimes, but
But this one is stating like you're not being paid.
I'm not
for
being
the-
paid. Oh, really? I didn't know.
This has changed
it's,
things.
yeah, it's a volunteer participation.
Okay. And is that it?
I think that's
Yes.
it.
Okay.
All right.
And you can just keep this one
Okay.
in case you want to contact our advisor.
Alrighty. And is that Dr. Sen?
Yes, Dr. Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar?
Yes, I've met him. I went to the 2 lectures, the one that at the lighthouse yesterday by Michael.
Oh, okay.
Frisch.
I actually went to the.
You were there too. I
Yeah.
must have been on the other side.
He's-
Yeah, there were some people, a lot of students on one side, and I
Mhm.
was sitting on the other side.
Okay. Oh, great.
And I went to the lecture at
Jeffrey
the
Clee.
Jeffrey Clee too,
Right.
over at Villa
Okay.
Terrace.
I was there too.
Same.
And I'm on the special events committee of the Historic Water Tower Neighborhood.
Oh.
And so we've been talking about doing this program, for
That's exciting.
months and months. So I'm familiar with the program.
Right.
And I saw, and because we were considering it last year too, I went to the final exhibition for the Thurston Woods project.
Yeah.
So I have that familiarity,
Yeah.
but I'm not, it's still quite a holistic kind of gestalt of a program, and it's hard to sometimes describe it in a few words because it's
Yeah.
bigger than just a few words.
We can agree with
Yeah.
that. We have the same sense. Yeah. So why don't we begin by just for the recording itself, if you could say your name, your background, just your basic relations to Milwaukee,
Okay.
to the Watertown neighborhood.
Okay. My name is Thea Kovak, and I've been a resident in this house since 1975, and previously lived in an apartment for a couple of years, and that was right after I got married. So Peter was already here, my husband to be, and he took a job with a law firm in Milwaukee, and we both came from the Chicago area where I had gone to college, and he had gone to law school. So we've been here quite a long time, and we love this neighborhood and raised both our children here, Nicholas and Delia, Delia. And since I was raised in Racine and Peter was raised in a suburb of Chicago, I think we were attracted to this area because it's right along Lake Michigan. It's a familiar body of water, and it would be, would feel odd for me to live inland anywhere, or even on a small lake. I'm just so used to that. It's almost like part of my, it's part of my identity, I think. At least part of my sense of place, where I belong. We enjoyed Lake Park with the children. We enjoyed the Downer Avenue Merchants community. And we always said it was like living on Sesame Street. So that the kids would, there was a couple, at the time, 2 grocery stores. There was the laundromat, there was the cleaners, there was the drugstore, the liquor store, not that we took the kids there, but the movie theater, the bookstore, and on. Just was a small little village inside a big city. And as far as the children, they went to Milwaukee Public Schools and had good education. Nick is now about to be 36. Delia she'll be 34 in September. So right now they're 35 and 33. So they went to, school quite a while ago, but we were really committed to public schools. And what else what have I missed?
Just out of curiosity, did they go to art school?
Delia, our daughter, went to Roosevelt School for the Arts, the middle school, and Milwaukee High School of the Arts. And then she went to Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, Rhode Island. And then went to Rutgers for her MFA. So it was the fine arts school in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
In what?
She has a degree in fine arts. Printmaking was her specialty, and it was at New Brunswick, New Jersey. Did I have that right? Yeah. And Rutgers is the state university of New Jersey. But you were in the East Coast. You probably know that.
Right, yeah. A couple of friends over there.
Yeah. And now she is still in Providence, Rhode Island. She lives there.
So, are you, what are your, let's begin with this question. How would you describe Downer Avenue in 3 adjectives in around the 70s and 80s? Or however you would describe the older Downer, if you even think.
Well, I had said it was like Sesame Street. It was, not that we were cartoon characters or puppets, but it was, we knew shop owners on a first name basis. It was a very comfortable relationship. And I did all my grocery shopping there. There were 2 grocery stores. There was one full service store called Century. And that's where I did the regular shopping, and I'd go to Sendik's for the produce. Because at the time, there weren't many grocery stores that had really good produce. And people would come for their butcher shop, for their produce. They'd come for miles. On the day before Thanksgiving, the place was mobbed. It was wall-to-wall people picking up their turkeys and their whatever they were serving for Thanksgiving, for the meal. There was, as you see now, there's an abomination next to us called the parking garage, and there was a threat of a multi-level parking garage there to be built there before that, and we successfully, as a neighborhood, got together and opposed it. I don't know if you've seen photographs of what was there before, but it was a bigger, much bigger green space next to our house and a surface level parking lot. And there were fruit trees built along the green space. There was a little popcorn wagon on the corner, a vintage historic popcorn wagon, little red building. And the kids would all go there for candy, and people get popcorn there before they go to the movies and things like that. It looked, Downer Avenue looked like an old European village center, because there was the church, the green space, you know, the little popcorn wagon, and the stores around it. It was very charming.
It was very, very charming.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think the change occurred?
Change occurred in beginning of 2007 when, well, it was actually a neighborhood meeting in 2006 on December 18th. I remember the date. So it was the middle of winter, right before Christmas. The alderman called a neighborhood meeting over here to announce that there was going to be this huge building project on Downer Avenue. And it was I've learned a lot in the process, that it was a general plan development, GPD, which I never heard of before. I actually didn't attend the meeting, my husband did. And then it was scheduled for approval by the Common Council in January, at their first January meeting. And people were appalled at the idea of an 11-story condo, parking garage. Other plans were to put a 24-hour cosmetic surgery center, which would, you know, and the reason they did it under a GPD was so that things like a special use permit, things like that, would just all be rolled into it, because that kind of a medical institution wasn't zoned for that. So they changed the zoning from general business, and the city sold the lot to the developers. The city owned that parcel. And so it all started, you know, basically then, 2006. And we fought it. Hundreds and hundreds of people wrote letters, signed petitions, to no avail.
What was your first, do you remember your first reaction to news of this development plan?
Fear, dread, that's how I felt. But with the hope that this would be something we could oppose, and oppose successfully, since we had done that already in the past.
Oh, in the past.
Well, when there was a proposal to sell this land off and have a parking structure built there.
Okay.
But at the time, I think the problem was that the parking structure they proposed wouldn't have increased the number of parking spaces to make it worth it. Because I think it was a two-story parking structure they were talking about back then.
Do you think the neighborhood grew in terms of not number of residents, but in terms of a sense of community with each development plan proposal?
Well, the problem was that there was division in the neighborhood, and it was cultivated by the aldermen who wanted this development to happen. And by the time we went to City Plan Commission meetings, there were people standing up saying they really wanted it, when everyone I had talked to didn't, but there were developers who live in this area, and they spoke in advocating for it, and my next door neighbor actually did. It did not bring the community together. It divided it. And at the time, we weren't members of the neighborhood group that I'm now membership chairman of, and have been this is my 4th year that I've been on the board, the executive committee, and then I was a trustee the year before. So I've been involved for 5 years, but we weren't members at the time, and we went to the neighborhood group for support, and it turns out that a lot of their executive board were pro-development, and it had been, I don't think it was an accident, but I don't know for sure. But what happened is the group eventually voted to not support the parking garage, but it was close because of the particular political stance that some of the trustees held at the time. And it's interesting for a historic preservation group that was the case, but that was the configuration at the time.
How many are part of the board? What does it mean to be a trustee?
There are trustees that are voted for every November in the general membership meeting. So a slate of officers, or trustees and officers are presented, and then the members vote on it. And usually they're approved. I've never had an issue. I've never been there when there's been an issue, or even anyone trying to run for the same seat as someone else. And so right now there's about 25 trustees. I think that's the maximum number of trustees. Probably at that time there were probably around 20 is my guess. And then there's a president, a past president, president-elect, treasurer, secretary, vice president of membership, and vice president of special events as the board. This year we added a vice president in charge of communications. So those are the board members. They're also trustees. So.
What level of influence, voice does this neighborhood have with this board in relation to these development projects?
Well, usually the alderman we have now, he's my son, right? Nick Kovak.
Okay.
Anyway, but he tries to he has neighborhood meetings, but you'll probably be someone will be talking to him, I think.
Yeah, the other group is like talking to him actually, because we're the cluster of like small groups,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have like 4 groups, and so one of the 3 groups are talking to him.
And he has meetings well in advance of projects and seeks neighborhood input instead of trying to have it at the last minute, and like it was done for this. So he does try. He gets neighborhood input, and he talks with the developers about design issues. But I'm not privy to his job. In fact, we don't really talk about his work all that much, except maybe what we see in the paper we'll talk to him about. He's got so many things going. We have a lot of things going in our lives, and we sometimes, we're just happy to talk about what we're having for dinner, or what the latest basketball team is doing, or Packers are doing, or whatever, since he's really interested in sports. And as far as this development, it was stretched out because there was so much opposition. It didn't get approved right away. The Landmark Trust sent a letter saying it threatened the historic district. There were it was delayed, but it was finally approved, and it was built, I think, between 2008 and 2009, or 2000. I can't remember. It was a very, very difficult time for me. It was a grief process I went through. I mean, when we first saw, when we saw the popcorn wagon being dragged off, and it was supposed to be put back in the neighborhood on Downer, and it's gone. They never followed through, and that was in the agreement in the GPD, that it was supposed to be part of the facade of this building. And it was apparently sold to the fellow who owns the Hollander, but he's done nothing with it. We've offered to get it back and get it restored, and he will not. He just puts us off, the group, our neighborhood group.
Is the owner a Hollander from Milwaukee?
I don't know. His name is Mike Idle. He owns several, a couple Hollanders and Café Central in Bayview, and I'm not even sure what I know what he looks like. I'm not. I didn't do the offer of getting the popcorn wagon back.
Why did you get involved to begin with? 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, we got involved. You mean with the neighborhood group?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Actually, we got very involved because of the threat of this development, and then someone on the nominating committee asked me to be a trustee later on, back 5 years ago, and I said, okay. And then I was asked to be membership chairperson. I had no idea what that entailed, and I said yes. And membership has done well. I have a great committee, and we're meeting here tonight, actually. So, yeah, we've increased the membership about 100%. It was about 90 people, 90 memberships when I started, and it's now close to 180. It's 178 memberships, and I know we're going to be getting more. So it's been very rewarding. I've met so many great people in this position, and I really enjoy it.
Why does this work? I guess to dig a little bit deeper, why do you care? Why does it have meaning for you?
Well, I think part of it is that, in a Freudian sense, it might be a little undoing of some of what was done to us. It's a way of building community and getting people together to be proactive instead of reactive to something like the abomination next door. I'm also, I like people. Even though I'm an introvert, I really enjoy people, and I'm the oldest of 8 children, so I'm used to having people around, and I enjoy being on the board because it's a way of improving the community in the place where I'm living. Milwaukee's a wonderful place. This neighborhood's a wonderful place, and it's a way to give back a little. That sounds corny, but it's a way to make sure things stay good, stay a healthy community. And even though I'm a visual artist, my original degree is in social work. I have a master's in social work from UWM, and I practiced social work for 11 years before I got the call to do art. So.
Could you describe how you feel when you do this work? So how would you further describe this sense of pride?
Well, I mean, when I first took it on, it was a moment of weakness. I think that I said yes. I was so surprised anyone wanted me to do anything like this, that not that I don't feel I was capable, but I'd never done anything like it before. And at first I felt a little intimidated, and because there was so much work to do. And and I didn't know exactly what the work was, number one, because the person who went before me wasn't as forthcoming with with anything but a vague job description, and no files. It was, other than one little thin file with a few pages in it. But I just developed some structure, and I have more files than anyone would ever want to take at this point. But we came up with recruitment methods and ideas for interesting people in the group. But anyway, so my feeling, I grew more comfortable in the role, and I grew more proud of every time I'd go to the post office box and pick up new memberships. I'd be like, yes, it's working. We're doing the right thing. It's working. And I work very closely with the special events chairperson. In fact, we're on each other's committees, because events are often what attract people. If someone isn't involved in a crisis or something where they want the group to intervene for them with whatever government or institution that there may be, then what bonds people are social events. And that's what attracts people. So membership and social events really have a lot in common, or a lot of joint goals, actually. So as far as how I feel about it now, I'm looking to find someone to replace me, because I think after 4 years, it's time for someone else to do it. And I have a lot of things organized to the point where it won't be overwhelming to the next person. And so I'm trying to I was on the nomination committee last year, couldn't find someone to take my place, so I did it again for a year. And now I'm looking a little more toward grooming maybe someone from my committee to take over. So as far as pride, there's pride, but it's just the joy of a job well done, and the other people on the board, are wwondrously affirming. The president's always saying, "What could I do without you?" and things like that. It's just, we all work very well together and support each other.
We go back to the Downer Avenue strip. I'm curious. We're very curious about kind of recreating the older Downer to this oral history interview. And so we want to ask you, what do you think are the first images that come to mind when you think of Downer?
The old Downer?
The old Downer.
I remember taking a walk from somewhere south. I don't know if we were walking toward the neighborhood on Prospect. I think it was might have been the children and I. Maybe it was, my husband was there too. And so we were experiencing, the neighborhoods coming along this way. And suddenly we get to this area, and I realize this is really different. We feel like we've come into a different world, a different field of experience. it felt like, oh, we're entering a little village or and I saw it with whole new eyes because I was coming from a direction I don't usually come from, and I was walking. When you're in an automobile, a neighbor, anything looks different. But when you're on your feet, you have a whole different sense of what something is. Because you can, all your senses are activated. Yeah, so, wow, you know, when we first moved here, what's now the CVS, this is so funny, I'm talking like the old person I am. What's on the corner now, the CVS, it was a pharmacy, I think. And the old place, I think, had the stools and the counter, if I'm remembering it right. Because I remember there was right across the street, this older lady lived, and she had worked there, and her husband had, I think, owned it. And she was telling us some stories about it, that she'd met her husband there. She was a salty old lady. She was great. Her name was Ruby. And so there's that. The movie theater was there. Sentry was there, Sendex. Where the coffee trader is now, it's a much more modern building than what was there before. And there was a pet store. I'm not sure what else. And there was somewhere along there was a bar called the Tuxedo Bar. It was a dive, a real hole-in-the-wall place, and students used to hang out there. And Sendex expanded because there was another pharmacy actually on the corner there. Do you have all the records? You can see all this stuff? Yeah, there was a pharmacy, another pharmacy. So we somehow supported two pharmacies. That always struck me as a little odd for in one block to have two pharmacies. And there was the Tuxedo Bar. I'm not sure there were any other restaurants. It's really changed into more of an entertainment restaurant area. It used to be a place that, other than the theater and the Tuxedo, there really weren't any eateries, any places to eat or places to hang out. It was more a small 2-block strip that served the neighborhood in terms of merchandise and services. And it's really, really changed to much more restaurants and you know, and I think it has, the Pizza Man's just moving in, and they had to get a liquor license, so there's another. We used to fight the liquor licenses. If someone came up because we said, okay, whatever there was at the time, there used to be the Chancery was over here, and Henry's, and the coffee trader, which also had Henry's. So we were like, and then there was the liquor store. We're like, this is enough liquor licenses for 2 blocks, and we'd go to City Hall and we would, you know, testify against new liquor licenses coming in. But it seems like this is the way it's going. So at this point, I think if another liquor license were applied for, I would think about opposing it. We just couldn't oppose Pizza Man. It's such a popular place, and it's almost like the city needs its Pizza Man. So, which I was never a regular customer there at all, but some people are. They were used to going to the Oriental Theater and then going to Pizza Man, because Pizza Man used to be on North Avenue, and it was a real thing for a lot of people. And so now they'll be able to go to the Downer, well, or the Oriental, and still go to Pizza Man afterwards. So it just seems like it seems like it has to be. So, and really, there's a synergistic kind of relationship between the residents, the homeowners, and the Downer Avenue. It's a real important relationship, and if they do well, we feel good, and if, you know, we just want them to respect us too, which is why this horrible thing that happened next door was such a betrayal of trust, such a betrayal of that relationship between a commercial area that abuts a historic neighborhood and a residential neighborhood.
Where does that blame go to?
Why did that happen?
When you say betrayal, would it be the city? Okay.
The city and the developer himself, who cared nothing about the neighbors.
And the developers are the GDEs and.
The GPD, General Plan Development, was the name of the zoning, where you don't have to, for changes, you don't have to go to the zoning board, you just get it approved by the Common Council. So, and in a GPD, you can make all kinds of changes all at once, and it gets all approved at once by the Common Council. It's often used for institutions, large, like a shopping mall or a school or that's my understanding. And to put it in a little neighborhood like this was, I think, it was a deliberate application. I mean, it was legal, but I don't think it was best practice. So the developer, it was two guys who got together and formed a business called DAPL, and that'll all be in the records. DAPL. And they didn't. They just saw that as land they wanted to grab, and as you notice, they built as close. Well, you can look at what they built, and you can decide, as architects, what do you think it fits in the neighborhood, and do you think it's a handsome building? You can make that judgment yourself. But I think it takes up every bit of space they could. They originally were going to build right up to our property line, which is right along this narrow sidewalk along our house, so that building would have been within 2 feet of our house. And so, they would have taken the tree down, everything. There were. I think they had no respect. They just didn't respect the neighborhood at all. They did everything they did was legal, but it was although not really, because we did sue them. We sued the city and DAPL. And if my husband were here, he could talk to you about all the legal issues. There were big legal issues. But I'd rather not talk about that, the lawsuit, or anything about it.
Do you remember local store owners and their responses? How were they different, similar? So how was the residents' response to this development proposal different or similar to the reactions of local store owners?
I'm not sure I should talk about any of this. It's pretty painful. The store, I'll be happy to speak off record about it.
Okay, okay. Then we can cross that out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather not have the mic on when I
Okay,
speak
okay.
of it.
So maybe we can turn it off and then
Okay.
start going back to it. Yeah. What do you remember when you think of Old Downer? What do you smell?
I know, I was thinking about that when I talked about all the senses and walking
Right,
up
right.
here. The smell of popcorn. It depended on the time of year. But anytime you'd go into Sendik's, you'd have all that wonderful smell of produce, citrus, and I loved going there over winter because at the time, they had exotic fruit that no one else has. I mean, now things come from Vietnam and heaven knows where, dragon fruit and things. You can find all this crazy stuff. But there would be, they'd have pomegranates and quince and what else did we have? Oh, persimmons. And we'd always get them for the kids' stockings at Christmas. We'd always try to find some exotic fruit to introduce them to. There's smells. That's about all I can really think of. I know smell, like Proust, it's supposed to make you remember everything. But obviously it's not working here. Smells. Well, my dentist was here, and still, well, he's moved now, but there was a dentist I went to, so that smell of dental equipment, and dental, that clove smell. And then any fried food from the restaurants, you'd always get that kind of enticing, wonderful grease smell that makes you want to run in there and eat it. There used to be a little restaurant underneath, well, there's Hollander, and it used to be a laundromat. And then for a while underneath it was El Condor, which was, I think, a Peruvian restaurant. And they made the best guacamole in the whole world. And I'd get a Jones for their guacamole at like 10 at night, and Peter would go there and get me guacamole. My husband would go there and get it for me. So I don't know if guacamole smells, but it was very wonderful flavor. And I've never had guacamole like that since. I don't know how they did it. In fact, I've tried really hard to replicate it and came up with my own recipe, but it's nothing like that. Theirs. It was just amazing.
What do you think? What kind of taste was it? Why do you think they made it so?
I'm not sure what it was. I don't know if they did something about marinating the onions in something, or maybe I don't know. I think it had something to do with the onions, but I could never figure out what it was.
How about what you hear when you think of Old Town?
Children playing. There were the Hollander. Oh, this is another change. There used to be an open space where Hollander has all their chairs, and it's still owned by the city, and the city allows them to use that space. I don't know if there's a nominal fee exchanged or what the arrangement is, but there used to be, jugglers would be there, and people playing musical instruments and kids playing around in there. It was a public space, and that got taken over by commercial interests as well. Yeah, In the fountain, kids used to put detergent in the fountains and, foam up all over. I always thought that was pretty wonderful. And kids would run around the edge. And it was a public square. Well, actually a triangle. It was a little public area, and that's gone now too. Sounds, the buses. This is a great lane for sirens for the hospital. So, it still is, but always has been. This is another sound that's still around. In Christmas, there's the Salvation Army guy who rings the bell. Yeah. Let's see. Well, there are bike races here every year. Have you experienced them yet? Okay. Well. Yeah, it's really pretty spectacular, and so it's that whoosh, that whiz of the bicycles, and it's right here is where the grandstand is, so it's always been we've been on top of it, and then there's the announcer, going all day, and then there's a band at night, and yeah,
Oh, wow.
so it's real festive.
I see.
It's gotten a little old, after all these years, but it's still exciting. It's still really exciting. And people have parties, along the route. We used to too. We used to barbecue in the backyard and have people over. And, yeah. So, there's.
How do you think, for those like, do you have grandchildren?
No, I don't. No. My daughter and her partner, Sarah, I don't think they're going to have children, but you never know.
Right.
And then Nick isn't married. He's got a girlfriend, but no grandchildren. Yeah.
What do you think, children in this neighborhood, how do you think they perceive Downer?
Well, I do, see lots of strollers around lately, and strollers and dogs and parents. And I see kids going into the bookstore. They've got a good children's section at the bookstore, and they have wonderful things going on at Boswell's. And it used to be Schwartz's, but you know that. And even before it was Schwartz's, there was another one. I may never think of it, but But anyway, I think children probably love going there. And when there was Licks, was where Pizza Man is now, ice cream. It meant ice cream. And ice cream sundaes. And I'm not sure. Nick will be interesting, whoever interviews him, because he grew up here. So he could give his memory as what it was like. My guess is if you're a youngster, it would be suddenly it's like this, like my impression of it being a little village. It's different from all the other blocks you're walking on, and has stoplights, and the fact that it's got all these different streets. It might take a while before you're old enough to be able to be allowed to navigate the street. You probably always have to have your parents' hand, for a long time.
Are there any comparable streets, like a block, like Downer, like a feels like a little village.
I,
Has that ever felt
you know, I've thought about that. And I think there are some places, maybe on, I'm not sure, that are just like a little too block. I mean, a little too block interruption, you know. I don't know. I mean, there are bigger ones, you know, like Whitefish Bay has Silver Spring. Shorewood has Oakland Avenue, parts of Capitol Drive, but I don't know if there are any that feel so complete, you know, that have all this myriad array of services. And I'm wondering if, well, there is the village of Wauwatosa. The old village is pretty cool, but it's not just a 2-block strip. It's several blocks square. I can't think of any, to tell you the truth. And I've been around, and I've thought about it. Yeah, I just really can't think of any others. No, I can't. It's unique, at least to me.
What are your thoughts about the future of this strip? Are you concerned? Do you feel safe? Do you?
I don't feel safe from development because that GPD is still in place, and at any time it can be reactivated for all whatever it originally was proposed for. And I think huge buildings on the street are totally inappropriate. And I'm concerned about it because of the economic forces that are about. You know, people are much more concerned about making money these days than about creating a neighborhood, I think. And I think it's hard for small storefront places to remain open. It's a Main Street kind of problem that happens all over the U.S. I mean, I don't, and I don't see this parking garage as a help. No one ever parks there. My husband goes there on Sunday mornings when you'd think, you know, the church and the brunch people, like 10:30, when church is coming out and people are, there's like 5 cars, 11 cars. The original surface lot had 28 parking spaces, and there's never that many in there. There are some full-time, they do have some on the, I think on the top level, some long-term rentals for people who live around here in the condos on the 2600 block of Hackett. And so there's often cars there, or there'll be the breadsmith truck, and you know, but people do not use it, which is the saddest irony of all. After all this, that it's not being used. I mean, originally it was for the pediatric offices across the street. Well, I kept saying, if I had a sick baby, I wouldn't be parking in a parking structure and crossing the street in winter. I'm sorry, I would park if I could, as close as I could. And it was not well planned from the get-go. And there were a lot of rationalizations that were put out there for why they were doing what they were doing. But as far as the future, I'm just taking each day as it comes, and I really hope we can keep a grocery store here. It's really important. And there's a lot of competition with Whole Foods and the other Sendek store in Shorewood, just off of Capitol, and the Pick and Saves that are around. So that's one of my big concerns, is to keep the grocery store, a grocery store. When having the hardware store there, I mean, I didn't mention the hardware store. It's a wonderful service for, Brady Street. Maybe Brady Street comes close. I mean, they have a hardware store. They have Glorioso's. That's a lot of groceries there. But it's not 2 blocks. It's 5 blocks or 6 blocks or whatever. Yeah.
Do you shop over at Sendek's?
I do.
Your main shopping over there?
What?
Do you do your main shopping?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay. Did you ever shop?
And part of the reason is because I had to find a store to replace Sentry, because I did my Sentry shopping. You get things like paper goods and everyday kinds of things, and then I went to Sendek's for the more specialty items. And so I had to find another, I go to the Pick and Save downtown on Ogden. And it took me a while to find a store that I could bond with. It was terrible losing Sentry. It was just, I was lost for months. And what I like about the one on Ogden is that it's a whole cross-section of people who come in there. If I go to the Pick and Save in Shorewood, it's pretty homogeneous, but it's very eclectic over there. I like the diversity in a city.
I think one question that we've been very curious about, and we feel that is very important to this project, is so we're making a short documentary film about the neighborhood, and we're trying to again be facilitators of your voice, of other community members' voices, and we're curious what would be important to you when you hear that someone is going to make a documentary about this strip.
Oh, about Downer?
Yeah.
In this whole neighborhood.
In the whole neighborhood. Wow, that's a big question.
Sure, this is like a summer program for us, but we want to make this meaningful for the community.
Mm-hmm. Wow, there's going to be a big pause in this recording. Well, I do think the lake is a very big element. Literally, it's a natural element as well, but it almost feels like it's a member of the neighborhood. And then the beautiful lake park. It's always a great place to take walks, ride your bike, escape to, have picnics. The 4th of July festivities there. It's like old-fashioned America, like all these people with their flags and little kids with their bikes all decorated. It's very retro. It's pretty classic Americana stuff. And well, this neighborhood is really bounded, by the wild, wonderful lake, and then by these institutions like the hospital, UWM. We've very much been affected by those two institutions. And in fact, the neighborhood group wouldn't be if St. Mary's hadn't tried to was starting to tear down houses to expand. And back in 1973, people got together and said, they can't destroy your neighborhood. We can't let this happen. And that's when it was designated a federal. They worked to get the National Landmark Trust, the National Trust, to designate it as a federal historic district. So that's what makes this so abhorrent, is that it's right next to a federal and a city historic district. You know, I mean, that's just in terms of the the institutional pressure. And UWM's, there's parking issues everywhere, especially west of Donner. But there's the congestion that brings, and and then the issues with students misbehaving, But, I mean, these are the kinds of things neighborhood groups always have to deal with, which is why I'm bringing it up. But I don't know what we do without UWM there, too. It's so much a integral part of the neighborhood, and it offers so much, and people make use of its programs, and just your program. I mean, the richness of that, being able to participate with your program is wonderful. It's really, 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 really great. But people, I think, is mainly what would need to be documented. There's just a my experience is that it's a place where neighbors are very close, and yet they also respect boundaries. And I mean, but my particular place is a bit unusual because there's only 2 houses on our block, this house and the house we face, and so I've always felt a little bit like like an appendage to it took me a while to get invited to the block party over here, and now we do every 4th of July, and but I like that too, because I like being a little separate. So, but it seems to me that way, the people I know, it's not like people are always in each other's backyards, or they're some neighborhoods are very, very they're permeable, but it seems like, I think sometimes because the houses, they might be close together, but they're big, and some of them are big, or they have, because it's an older neighborhood, the landscaping is more mature, and so that idea of that you can be separate, but if you need a neighbor, they're there for you, and there's a lot of good social stuff that happens. So I don't know how you would do people, and you are doing people, but I think that's I think the thing that distinguishes us is that we have people who I think are liberal. Most of them are liberal. We have plenty of we have politically conservative people too, but we're kind of known as more of a liberal area, and that in the largest sense that we're accepting of so many different kinds of lifestyles, and that we have these beautiful homes, that have been preserved, and then we have these wonderful institutions. I think it's a mix of those things that I think are important. Yeah, and that it's a place where people of all ages live. I mean, neighborhoods have people, elderly people, young people, single people, married people, people of all sexual persuasions. You know, it's just very, open and accepting and diverse. I know there are some places in Milwaukee where it seems like everybody's a young family and has kids. Like you just, that's what the neighborhood is. Or, it's just that here it's a little bit of everything, and it's not far to get to downtown. It's not far to get to North Avenue, Brady Street. Or if you want to go to the burbs, you go to, the North Shore burbs, you're close to that if that's what you like. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have two final questions.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned lake as a kind of member of the community.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of memory related to kind of the beach of the lake, or like you have more memories about like Lake Park?
Well, because it's the bluff is there, and then you have to go across Lincoln Memorial Drive. It's not like you can just to the beach. So I've spent more time up on the bluff just looking at the lake or watching the moonrise, or I never get up early enough for the sunrise, not often enough. But it is those kinds of experiences can be had. But we've gone to the beach with the kids, and if you go up further north, away from Bradford Beach, it gets a little wild. There's a little wilder part that I like, and I do. I have memories of it being much more serene. Now it's gotten to be more of a party atmosphere, but more people are coming down, and that's wonderful. They're experiencing it, and the volleyball games and all that stuff. I think there is a good balance, though. I mean, you can't have amplified music every night till midnight or anything like that. It's, again, there's that synergy with a residential neighborhood. But yeah.
And if you go to the lake or beach, were you with your kids or with your husband or alone?
Would be more with the kids, or I've taken solitary walks. I belong to a book club, and one of the members has a boat, a sailboat, and we have one meeting a year where we're anchored at the dock, and we read poetry and drink wine and eat hors d'oeuvres, and so that's been a constant memory for several, maybe 10 years at least. And yeah, and just even driving down Lincoln Memorial Drive and watching all the people having fun at the beach, or watching the runners and the kites, and it just feels so alive and it's vibrant.
And I have a question about Downer Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked to some people, in the church and in the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the people mention Coffee Trader over there.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think of the Coffee Trader in your memory, in your experience?
The Coffee Trader was so hip and trendy at the time. It was, people would just flock there because the idea of coffee was new. And this was before Starbucks, and it was, that coffee was special. And the design was really very avant, and it was. I remember when Nick was born, I took him there. He was a really young baby, and they had these wonderful they were fans, and it was a cylinder that went along here, and the fans there were maybe 6 of them along the ceiling, and they were 3-part fans with not palm, but woven palm fan, regular fans, and they just went around and around and around, and the baby would just look up and be very totally occupied, and I could sit there and have a friend, and we could go out to lunch. It didn't last long. He was way too active to have that last long, but it was, that was just the place to be. It was the place to go, and the fact that it was right near our house was was such a plus. And then I have a memory of Gill's Bongo Lounge used to be where the Hollander is. Gill's something or other Bongo Lounge. And at the time, it didn't have a liquor license, and it was Seattle grunge time, and it was, the coffee shops with the big overstuffed chairs, and that was all the trend. And my daughter was in middle school, and it was heaven for her because our friends could all come over, and they could all go to Gill's and hang out. It was a perfect place for young people. Yeah. So yeah, Coffee Trader was. Everyone missed it when it, ended.
Do you know why?